Hey Leggari Nation! This is the first video that we've ever done like this, a custom epoxy vase, and today we're going to show you exactly how we did it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you love it, and if you're not already a Leggari subscriber, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new projects we're launching.
So I'm going to go over mixing. You can get all these items on our store under single items. So we have a 1.5 gallon kit of our clear metallic epoxy. We have our 3 colors. We have our gold effects, obviously a drill, paddle mixer, some gloves, stir sticks. This is to make 120 ounces. We have an 80 ounce mark on here. That'll be part A. And we have a 40 ounce mark on here. That'll be part B. I'll be able to mix the 120 ounces doing that. And then this is to make our 3 colors. And then obviously to do our dirty pour batches, some cheap throwaway cups. So we'll just get right to it. We're gonna go to the 80 ounce mark of the part A. And I always like to slow it down when I get close. Make sure we get it right on. All right, so now I have enough measured out to make 120 ounces. The vase area we're gonna coat is about 14 square feet, and I'm making a little bit extra, and we are doing it at 8 ounces per square foot because we want it pretty thick, so when we drape it over there, it's got a good thick coating as we're draping it over the piping to create that vase. And that'll probably make more sense when we get to that point. When you're mixing smaller batches like this, you want to make sure if you're not using a secondary mixing container, you're scraping the sides really good, you're scraping the bottom really good, and you're thoroughly mixing this. And what I mean by a secondary mixing container is having another container. You mix it in here for about 30 seconds and then you dump it into that other container. That way you don't have any unmixed product on the edges. So that's what a secondary mixing container is, and we highly recommend that for any project that you guys are doing. We never want to use all the product, drain it all out, tip it upside down if you're not using that secondary mixing container, because just in case something on the edges weren't mixed in, you'll wind up having a soft spot on your project. So I'll dump the majority of this out, but I'm not gonna scrape it, dump it upside down, let it all drain out, none of that. We're just gonna dump it out and leave whatever's left on the edges in this bucket. All right, so now we're gonna pour for our colors. This is what I mean by getting everything out of this bucket. That's where I'm gonna stop there, right? I'm not gonna scrape and get everything off these sides because I don't know 100% that this was mixed in all the way unless I'm using that secondary container. If I use that secondary mixing container, I can scrape all that out. I can use every single bit of it. I don't have to worry about it not setting up or having soft spots. So I want the majority of it black, so I'm gonna do black in this guy. So we're gonna be doing copper, deep red, and black. Now these smalls will do about 3 quarts, pigment at about 3 quarts. So I don't necessarily need to use all these. and I'll show you a way to make sure you have enough pigment. I'm gonna not add enough pigment in this deep red so I can show you how to make sure you have enough. Now when mixing, we want to go from the lightest color to the darkest so we don't have to clean our paddle off. So just looking at this, you would think, oh, it probably has enough color. And that's because it's in a mass, right? I'm gonna show you how to check to make sure you have enough pigment. Dip a paint stick, let it drain off for a minute. See, I can kind of see through that. You can just tell there's not enough pigment in that. So I know, all right, I need to add more. And that's a simple way to tell if you have enough pigment in there versus trying to measure everything out, measure out your pigment, stuff like that. It's really fast to do it like this. These are all good, I already know. And I did this on purpose so I could show you that we need to add more pigment. So now we'll mix this again. Dip a paint stick in there, let it drain off for a minute. Now we can't see through it. So now I know there's enough pigment in there. Simple way. Simple but effective. All right, so we got our colors ready. Now I'm gonna show you how to clean your paddle wheels to keep them new every time. What we have here is denatured alcohol in a bucket. We got a lid to put on it so it doesn't evaporate. I'm simply gonna mix this paddle wheel in here and clean it off. Forward and reverse. You see how clean that gets it? Real fast, and I've probably cleaned out 30 different paddles in there. We can always keep reusing it. Only thing we want to do is wipe the shaft off, and then I always like to just run through it real quick and wipe it. But now I have a perfectly clean paddle, and I'm not going to have epoxy build up and start flaking off as I'm mixing and hitting the edges. Last thing you want to do is do your project and you got a bunch of epoxy chunks in it from your nasty paddle wheel. We're gonna shake this gold up. Anytime you guys are using our effects, you wanna shake them up. Then we got the gold right here. I'm gonna dump a little bit in a couple of these, and then we'll kind of add it as we go. So keep in mind when you're doing this process, the more smaller batches you're making and pouring out, the more dominant your veins and patterns are gonna be. If you're making bigger batches like these, they're not gonna be as tight of veins, right? They're gonna kind of blend out more, so it depends on what look you're going for. We want a bunch of patterns on this, and so we're gonna be doing quite a few of these smaller batches. So ready, want to dump this out as soon as we can. Now remember, the longer this resin sits in a container, the hotter it's gonna get, and this will eventually flash off and become really hot. So you wanna be real careful when you're doing this process that you're mixing, doing your batches and dumping them out right away. Don't wait around, get them off, get them mixed and get them on your project as soon as you can. And then if they do start to heat up and get hot, or if they start smoking, don't use that product, because it starts in the middle, gets kind of clumpy and works its way out. And so it might seem like it's fluid, but when you go to dump it out, it'll be all stringy and chunky. So if it gets to that point, you're pretty much done with that, whatever cup it is. So again, just move quickly and you guys should be fine. Another little tip is you can cool your resin down, set it in a cup or a bucket of cold water. 2 jugs will sit in a 5-gallon bucket, put cold water in there, let them sit in there for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That'll cool the resin down. It will make it a little thicker, but it'll still work like it should, and that'll extend the working time for it sitting in containers. So that's really good to do, especially when you're doing countertops. Smaller projects like this, it doesn't take long to dump it out, but when you're doing bigger projects like counters, it's always good to cool that resin down before you start the mixing process. That's gonna give you the max working time you can get out of the resin. So I'm gonna explain how we got to this point. I know you guys saw some of the footage. First thing we did, we got a flat panel, made sure it's perfectly flat, right? Leveled it both ways. And then what we did is we draped painter's plastic over the top, got it as tight as we can. Now some of these crinkles should level out when the resin hits it, right, and starts to level. So I'm not really worried about that. We wanna get it as flat as we can. And then we took a Sharpie, mapped out our design. And since we're doing a vase, it obviously needs to be somewhat round. So when it folds over, it's kind of even. We could have made these a lot more jaggedy if we wanted to. Depends on what shape you're going for. And then we took weather stripping and we went around and made the barrier to keep the resin in there, because we want it to be pretty thick. We don't want it to just kind of level out, right? We want it pretty thick and even everywhere. And then we slit these edges where we had to curve it. We kind of slit the edges so it didn't have tension on that, so it kind of laid flat. And yeah, so this is basically ready to go. Biggest thing is make sure this is level, because if it's not, we're gonna have product run to the lowest point and it's gonna be a lot thicker there. So we're basically ready to pour. You can also map out a design with the Sharpie if you want. I'm just gonna kind of go random. Not seeing a lot of gold, which is fine, but I'm gonna add some gold. So when you add the gold to the top, that's usually gonna come out pretty dominant in the beginning. So I'm gonna squirt a little gold in here. Now I should get quite a bit of gold. So I'm gonna pinch this so I don't get a big old pile of it. You can see that gold just pops. Those Leggari effects are so awesome for creating cool veins like that. And I always like to take note of what colors are coming out of my containers, right? Like if I'm having a lot of black on this side, if I see black come out, I need to move it around, right? If I have a lot of red or whatever. So just kind of take note of what colors are coming out of your cups, and you can kind of move it around as needed. Now don't worry guys, if you see a spot you don't like this, it's just too much gold. So I'm just gonna kind of break this up. I'm just gonna follow the pattern that I have out here, break that guy up a little bit, just so it's not as dominant of a gold spot. I want more black out here, and since I have a little left, I'm just gonna do some black kind of fracture veins using our black effects. So it's always good to order multiple colors. That way if you guys wanna add stuff, you can add those and you don't have to wait, right? Or try to figure something else out to order those. The effects are cheap, they go a long ways, and they're always fun to add to different projects. So I'm gonna do the same thing, mix it in the top, and then we're just gonna pinch this, and I'm gonna follow some of these veins that I already have out here with the black. And then same thing, add a little bit more. And I'm just gonna go around and highlight some of these edges. So guys, all I'm doing is just blending these in. So last two things I'm gonna do, I'm gonna spritz isopropyl to create a bunch of cells, and then once that evaporates, I'm gonna mix denatured alcohol, and then we're gonna let this thing sit overnight. Now just keep in mind, if you're doing this in hotter temps, you're probably gonna have to peel it off sooner. It's pretty cool in the warehouse, so we probably have a little bit longer for this to sit here, but we just wanna get that to where we can pull it off and it'll still mold over a piece of pipe to create that vase design. So we're gonna pull it probably tomorrow, and then we'll drape it and let it sit for a day or two. That way it gets completely hard, and then we'll pop it off of that vase and see what happens. We've never done it, so perfect test here. All right guys, so when you're doing a lot of effects and doing thick pours like this, you're gonna get champagne bubbles in the mix. Don't worry, we can eliminate those just by misting it with denatured alcohol. So once that isopropyl evaporates, about 5-10 minutes, we can mist it with denatured, and it'll completely make this resin just lay out glass smooth and help any of those champagne bubbles in there release. And you'll kind of see they'll just start to immediately disappear. There it is, guys. If you have some of those stubborn champagne bubbles not coming out, mist it one more time, but now we have a glass smooth surface. Didn't torch it, just misted it with some denatured, and voila. So we'll let this set up and we'll show you draping it probably tomorrow afternoon or something. We'll see, who knows. All right, so this thing's basically ready to drape over this PVC pipe that we have, and that's how we're gonna create that vase look. Now, just from doing this the first time, we kind of have some different thoughts if we ever do it again. We'll probably do thicker plastic, or maybe even use a sheet of like plexiglass, something that's nice and flat, because you can kind of see once I poured it out, and when we pulled the tape edge, it kind of pulled the plastic and kind of crinkled it, which is fine. It's still really thick there. I think we're not gonna have any issues with it, but to eliminate that, we wanna get a really flat surface. That way when we pull the tape, we're not gonna get any of these kind of stress lines that it has in it. So what I plan on doing, I just got some PVC piping from Home Depot, and then we had a test piece that we poured out just to kind of see how this would work. And what we did is we put a sheet of plastic on it so it didn't stick to the PVC. And then this is basically, obviously this still needs to set up, but we just wanted to see how it would mold. Molded really well. So that's kind of what we're gonna do on this one. And now again, there's a lot of different ways. We could do a bigger vase, we could get a bigger pipe, a lot of different stuff, but we're gonna just try it on this guy. Okay, so what we're gonna do, because we wanna have plastic on the back side of this just in case it wants to stick to this. So we're gonna cut around and then we're gonna pull this up, drape it over here. We're gonna start to shape it. We might use some tape. And what I did on the tape is I did it backwards, so the sticky side's out, and we can wrap it and kind of mold this how we want it, because we want the edges to be kind of crinkled, and I think it'll give it a really cool look. All right guys, so we had a couple spots where I think when we cut that weather stripping, we cut through the plastic. So we're gonna just kind of scrape it off. It should pop off of this piece here. And again, you got to do this at the right time because we want it moldable. If we wait too long and it gets too hard, you won't be able to mold it. Perfect. And I'm not worried about these edges because we can always come through and trim and cut these edges however we want. All right, now the trick here is trying to find center. So guys, we're just molding it. You can see how moldable the resin is if you get it at the right time. And then within a day or so, this thing's gonna be just rock hard and it'll completely hold this shape. All right guys, so that's kind of the shape we're going for. We can do the sticky side because once this gets hard, obviously blue tape's gonna peel off of it very easy. So I'll have kind of Justin get it how he wants it. And then we'll do just a couple rows. All right guys, so that's gonna hold that shape and we'll just let this set up till it gets rock hard. All right guys, so this thing sat for, I think 2 days. It's still not, I mean, it's pretty hard, but I think it's ready to pull. And also I wanna be able to trim up some of this excess before this thing gets like rock hard. So what we wound up doing was setting something heavy on the top here. Doesn't matter, right? But you can kind of see we set something on there to just kind of keep the bottom flat. So in theory, when we flip this thing over, it should sit level. So I'm gonna pop this thing off. And then we'll see how it sits here, which is awesome. It sits perfectly flat. Even though, like I said, we have a lot higher spots there, which we could have been more dialed in with trying to get it centered, but it actually looks pretty cool having them kind of random heights around it. So an easy way to make sure you have center is measure center and maybe put like a mark. That way when you go to set it on your piping, you know exactly where to set it to keep it centered. So now we're just gonna pull the plastic out of here. Very cool. So now I can trim up some of these spots, and you could even do that while it was on the pipe, while it's maybe a little softer. It is kind of hard right now, so I'm gonna just start cutting. And just keep in mind, once this gets hard, some of these edges could be relatively sharp. We could maybe sand some of these down, maybe cut them with even like just a metal blade would cut through some of these spots. All right, we're gonna grab some metal shears, try that. I don't know, maybe even some scissors, because again, guys, it's still kind of moldable. The only downfall of cutting after is it's not high gloss there. That's the only downfall of that. So I would recommend cutting it before you drape it. So cutting it on the flat surface. But for our first one, I think it was a success. All right guys, so you can see when we're cutting, it's taking away the sheen versus like right here. So I think, yeah, the best thing would be to maybe wait longer to pull the tape. That way it doesn't like run out and bleed across, or just cut that tape out before we set it on here. But yeah, and the other option, we could spray paint, tape off the outside, spray paint the inside a solid color, yeah, a few options. So we'll probably do again, this was our first one, test one. We want to do like some 4-foot tall matching vases, and we're gonna figure out how to make them. So obviously 4-foot tall, we want them a little skinnier and tighter, so we're gonna figure out how to do that. But man, this thing's cool. So we'll pull this tape off, and you'll see that it'll hold that shape. All right, so me and Tim were talking through this. We want to spray this one gold, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a skinny wheel, cut all this kind of flat, flatten it all off, clean it out, and then we're going to tape the outside edge, and we're going to spray the whole inside like a gold metallic, and that should really make it pop. And then all our edges are cleaned up, and from cutting, it's going to dole out the tops like this, but we're going to tape on the outside, and I'm going to spray so all these tips will be gold as well. So it should look really cool. When I'm filing this down, I'm trying to get it so it's all smooth. See, I need to go a little bit there. I'll file that down. I can still kind of go with the contours of the shape of this edge. I just want to get it all smooth. That's going to eliminate it being sharp. It's not going to catch it if someone does touch it. So yeah, that's all I'm doing here. All right, guys, so we took a flappy metal disc that you would use on metal, and we flattened off the top of this, right? Made it so it's not sharp. Worked really, really well. It was super fast. And then we put it back on the thing to get that mold, because it's still pretty moldable. It needs to sit a day or two longer, but we want to get this finished up so we can show you guys. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to tape on these edges on the outside. That way we can spray the whole inside with gold metallic, so it just makes it really pop. And we're also going to spray the very flat parts that we did from the flapper disc, those flat spots from the flapper disc. We're going to spray those gold well, so the rim of it will have a gold, solid metallic gold on that as well, and then the outside will be the metallic epoxy. So that's the next step. Tape it off, spray it all, and then we'll pull it off and show you guys what it looks like. Ready to be spray painted. Again, we're just spray painting the inside, and you know, I'll be honest with you guys, I probably could have cleaned this up a little bit better now that I'm looking at it. Like I said before, we're going to be spraying the tops of this. That's why the tape's kind of just overhanging everywhere, right? We just want to do the inside, the top edge where I sanded it down with that metal flapper disc, and we're going to be doing gold metallic. And I'm not trying to get way down in here. I'm just trying to get where you're obviously going to see it. You can kind of see all the ripples from the plastic, like I was saying, kind of crinkled up. So using a thicker sheet, or even going over like a plexiglass, like I said before, would eliminate that. And this part right here, that's all kind of clumpy. So this spot right here, that's where the plastic was ripped and it bled under the plastic. That's why it looks like that there. I kind of like the crinkles it has, and it just adds some character to this thing. All right, so we'll let this thing dry out, peel off all the plastic, reveal it, and then I'll probably tape it and just kind of, because again, it's still moldable. We wanted this thing to get rock hard so it holds its shape, but we'll be able to get you guys final footage and show you what it's gonna look like once it's done. All right, so spray paint's dry, threw a fan on it, give it about 10-15 minutes, and I'm gonna peel the tape off, all the plastic, set it up on the table. If we have any spots we need to get gold off where it bled through or something, we'll address that. And then again, we're gonna retape it, but you guys will be able to see what this thing's gonna look like before we do that. All right, guys, so just a few minor spots like right here. We'll clean that off with just a rag, some denatured alcohol, and then we'll just go around and get any overspray spots cleaned. All right, spray the rag.